Hello and welcome to the Find Focus podcast. Today I will talk to Joanna Jast. She's a writer, entrepreneur, and self-appointed human nature expert. Hello, Joanna. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Martin. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, great to talk to you. I took a look at your Amazon profile and you say there that you dream of inventing a direct brain-computer interface one day so you can upload and download knowledge and update your behavior software in a few seconds. Is that really true?
I'm not really working on it, but I'd love to have something like that. So if you know of anyone who's working on it, please let me know so I can get in touch with them.
Okay. So how did you get started with this whole topic of neuroscience and psychology and technology?
So the neuroscience and psychology, that's part of my medical background. I trained as a doctor and then as a psychiatrist and also did a lot around that. So that's all, it's been there for many, many years. Technology obviously came with technology. And I've started looking at the interface between psychology, neurology, neuroscience, and technology. I started doing it when I started having problems, when I realized that my brain wasn't performing as well as it used to, or wasn't performing as well as it wanted it to perform. And I started looking into neuroscience for answers and to technology for solutions.
Okay. What problems did you have specifically? Can you give us an example?
Um, it was a number of problems. And initially, what I saw was just my inability to process information, to take in and process information. It was my difficulty in reading scientific papers, my inability to remember what I've read, and then immediately, and then even to use it in a conversation. And some of it had been a problems for a while, and I realized that actually some of it, it's like, this is the way I am, this is the way I've always been, but some of it were a result of a number of, I was actually going through a very stressful time in my life, and this is when I realized that things were pretty bad. At the time, I can't remember what came first, whether I was looking for solutions. Yeah, I think it started off by me looking for solutions. I realized I had problems with my memory, had problems with my focus, and I started looking for solutions. I came across a book by John Medina called Brain Rules. And this is when I started reading about how our brain evolved, and hence what are the sort of optimal what's the word I'm looking for? The optimal setup for our brain to perform up to the whatever our maximum or whatever optimal capacity of our brain is. And this is how I started teasing out what the problem was, what my problem was, and how to solve it.
Okay. And where are you now with this? Like after studying everything and writing a couple of books about these topics. So how have you improved?
I actually thought about it when you invited me to the podcast, sort of reflected back on what's happened with me, my focus, my productivity over the past few years. So it's been 4 years now, and I'm actually pretty good in terms of focus. I've eliminated a number of things. No, scratch it. I haven't. I've learned to manage a number of problems, and what I'm left with now is one specific problem, which has always been a problem, but not a massive one. It's not that it is a massive problem, but once you sort of eliminated other things, you can see clearly what else is left. So what I'm left with now is some difficulty in decision, not so much, yes, as well. So decision making issues and how it affects me, and the effect that it's got on my focus and productivity.
Okay, but now if you're writing a new book, what kind of habits do you have for the writing process specifically?
I have developed a writing routine, which is heavily reliant on my environment, and I'm a big fan in your environment, a physical environment, to enforce your habits, to enforce your routines. So one of the things that I use to make me stay at my desk and keep writing or whatever, keep doing the research or whatever I'm supposed to be doing, is I call it I chain myself to my desk. I don't chain myself to my desk, of course, but I set it up in a way that it is harder for me to get up and walk away than to stay put. But this is also, it's the result of me understanding very well what my problem was. I've got a short attention span, and I've got a problem with delayed gratification. So I had to address it, and also using solutions that are going to that fit in with my personality and with my current context. So, for example, and this is something I've been talking about openly for some time, I am actually very lazy by nature. So if I have to do something that requires a lot of effort, chances are I'm not going to do it. So all my solutions have to be easy to implement. If I want myself to do something, and if I don't want myself to do something, then I have to make it harder. So what I'm basically doing, so my previous setup was very effective in my previous house. I was basically stuck behind a very heavy chair in a corner. So getting out of that corner took some energy and some effort. Now I'm sitting with I've got my legs up on the desk. So it's, it takes a few moves to get off that, position and walk away. So these are little things that I use in my environment to keep myself at my desk. So that's one thing. The other thing is that I need to be able to manage my short attention span, which is driven by my difficulty in delaying gratification. So basically, I've got this short attention span and instant gratification problem, and I've got to deal with it. And the way I deal with it is probably not sort of mainstream, because I've tried mainstream solutions in delaying gratification, not worked, has not worked. So I just use little rewards now and then, or distractions, actively use distractions to keep myself focused.
That's interesting. What kind of distractions?
I actually allow myself to go on certain websites and again, this is the approach. I really need to give some backstory and some background, because it sounds strange, and I do realize it sounds strange, but it is really deeply rooted in understanding of my specific problems. So I use distractions when I'm upset, when I've got anxiety and I sort of mull over a decision that I've got to make. This is a specific problem that I've got now. I need to shift my focus, and I've tried other strategies. They don't work. So what I use distractions. So I would go, for example, on Facebook, scroll down, or I would go on YouTube and watch a funny cat video, which will shift my mood. And once the mood is shifted, I will go back to work. I also use I would walk away, have a drink of water, or even go downstairs to check my letterbox, go onto the balcony to check my flower boxes, anything that has the potential to shift my mood. And once it's shifted, I go back straight into work. So the system is pretty complex, because it's not only I allow myself to do certain things with a view to achieving a certain outcome, but I also have some measures in place that will not allow me to spend, I don't know, half an hour watching videos on YouTube, okay, or scrolling down on Facebook. So I've worked out a system that allows me to do certain things, but only within certain parameters.
Okay, so it sounds almost like a description of what my software does. Yeah, I noticed, like, the first thing you said is you chain yourself to the computer. I actually talked about in another episode to the founder of FocusMate, where you actually team up with a real life person for 1 hour or for 50 minutes. So this makes you show up in front of the computer. I use that to actually show up in the morning in front of the computer, and use my software to just not stay on YouTube longer than 15 minutes or something. So I have almost a similar setup in my working routine. So it makes perfect sense for me.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, and what do you think is the first step for somebody new to this topic to get started to develop a routine like this that works for his individual context?
There are actually two things. First thing is you need to understand the nature, the underlying problem, the root cause of your problem. And the second thing, you need to understand yourself, your likes, your dislikes, what's worked for you, what hasn't worked for you, um, and your current, so yourself, your personality, but also your current setup, your current context, your physical environment, your emotional environment, your social environment. Because if you address something that is not the root cause, then your solution will help you, but not always. And after some time, you're going to have problems again, and then you'll try again, and it will work for a while, but then it will be back to square one again. If you apply a solution, even if it's you've discovered your root cause, you're addressing the problem, but if your solution is not totally adapted to your personality and your context, it's not going to work. So implementing it is going to be a problem. And this is what often people think is a problem with the motivation, not necessarily with the motivation. It's probably the problem with a solution that's not adapted to your personality. For example, if your solution requires you to do something you don't enjoy doing, the more you have to do of what you don't enjoy doing, then that's the more difficult it is. Or if you have to, if your physical environment does not really allow for this to be easily implemented, or your social environment, and if you, for example, a key thing would be, people you live with. If your solution gets on their nerves, then it's a problem. It's not going to work too long, okay? Or if your solution requires you to have a very expensive, I don't know, you've got your solution is very expensive, then, and you don't have a lot of money, then that's going to be a ongoing problem. So these two aspects, understanding the underlying cause of your difficulty and applying a solution that is in line with your personality and that fits in with your current context. And I really want to emphasize the current context, because your context will change as your life changes, and staying aware of it and adapting your solutions to your changing lifestyle, your environment, is really, really crucial in maintaining that routine.
Yeah. What is the best way to find the root cause? Because I think oftentimes it's hidden, and yeah, we think one thing is a problem, but actually it's a completely different one. So yeah, what's the best way to access the root cause?
It's really a sort of self analysis type of exercise. And the easiest way to do it is, first of all, to record all your focus slip ups. So every time you realize you become distracted, or something or someone interrupted your workflow, write it down. Write down the time, write down where you were, what you were doing, and what might have happened. Because for some people, you might realize that you always become distracted in the morning. And for example, if you realize you've always become distracted in the morning, it might be the fact that you're just not a morning person, or because it might be the time of day, it might be the room where you are at, it might be people you are with. You might realize that the actual problem always seems to be around a certain type of task. You only become distracted with certain type of tasks. So even just collecting data on when, where, how you become distracted could give you enough information to understand. But I always recommend you go a little bit deeper, and a really good exercise and a really good way of analyzing and searching for that sort of root cause of your problem is to go through a 5 why exercise, which is basically a very simple, it's a sequence of why. So you say, so I become distracted. Why? because the room was noisy. Why? Because it's an open sort of space office. Why? Because that's the way we work. Why? Because that's what the boss said. Why? Because that's the way we work here. So usually by the fifth why, you arrive at the root cause. Or when you realize, you start circling around, which is what I have just sort of demonstrated here. So that's the root cause. Okay, so that's the way we work here in this company. So that's the problem. So how am I going to solve this problem? So the next step would be, how are you going to solve this problem? So the 5 why is also a very good way of analyzing the underlying root cause of the problem.
And when you discovered the root cause, what changes can you make, or how do you address? Like, what do you do with your findings?
I think what is really important is to apply a solution that you know that is likely to work for you in your given context. Okay, so even though, to use the example I've just presented, I get distracted by, and I've got no way of my own office. So what else can I do to make it easier for me? Okay, some people might wear, okay, so a solution might be you wear noise cancelling headphones. But for some people, and I've tried them, and some of them just really, they create a sort of, I think it's sort of negative pressure on make you dizzy. So it's not really good, because you kind of better off because you're no longer distracted by noise, but you can't work in them for too long because it make you feel, I don't know, dizzy or whatever. So you really need to understand what works for you. And I always recommend, if you've tried this before several times and it's never worked for you, no matter how good this solution is for everybody else in the world, you're going to be, don't waste your time trying it again. You've tried it 15 times. Don't bother. Find something else. And I very often, when I work with people individually, we look at quite creative solutions, quite, really thinking outside the box, because the better you understand your problem, and it's like no longer, oh, I get distracted by people. Right. What can you do? Can you just move these people? Can you move out of this room? Can you move them out of this room? So, okay, usually there are more than 2 solutions to a problem. Usually there are 3 or more. And the more creatively you think, the more, the more ideas you get. And really, it's again about don't waste your time trying things that have not worked before. I also say, if your solution requires you to learn a new thing, on top of what you need to do, learn a new skill, or you have to do something you don't like doing, or you have to give up something that you do like doing, all these things are going to cost you more. And hence, your solution is unlikely to work for you. So understanding yourself and understanding your context. For example, if you work with other people, some of your solutions that might be great might not necessarily be okay for them. And people might, and people put pressure on you as well. So you've got to understand your physical environment. You've got to understand your emotional environment. You've got to understand your social environment. And your solution should be adapted to all this as well.
Okay, can you tell us a story, maybe the most outrageous story that you had to develop with one of your clients, or that you heard of?
Okay, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think something that is not, because they usually very, they very specific. They very individualized, because it really relies on who you are, understanding yourself. Typically, for example, when working on a exercise routine, is that people realize that I'm more likely to exercise in the morning. And if you get up and you put your, this is something I do as well, you put on your smelly tracksuit. you're already ready. And if if you wanted to skip your exercise routine and just go to work, you've got to change and you've got to shower. So you've got a number of things you have to do. So there's a cost associated with that. So really thinking about what is it that is more likely to make you do what you want to do, and what is it that is likely to make you not want to do what you don't want to do. So things like that. I've had people coming up with ideas of sort of working in a cardboard box. uh, they didn't have a room, like an office, but they worked in the living room. The living room was free, and there was no one during the day, but yet still they didn't feel contained enough. So, coming up with the idea, well, what about if I put a big cardboard box at the table and I just sit in that cardboard box? Same room, same table, same nobody else, but I am just, and the number of sort of things that worked in that solution, being quite isolated from that empty room, being contained, being in a different space, although the same space. So I go to work to my cardboard box. You know what I mean? Like really crazy,
Yeah.
yet really, but it really boiled down to the fact that we understood what the underlying problems were and applied solutions that actually targeted the root cause in a way that was acceptable in the given environment. Obviously, if you were to sit in a cardboard box when you're in a sort of open space office, that it's not going to work probably, unless your colleagues don't mind it. They probably would mind it. So it's really taking on board all these aspects and finding a solution that would allow you to do what you want to do without doing what you don't want to do.
Yeah, awesome story. Are there any tools that you use to develop better focus and better routines?
I do. So I understand myself quite well, and I've spent some time actually, obviously, exploring myself, but much more important was to accept this is the way I am. And one of the things I've been talking about openly is the fact that I am actually lazy by nature. And what I do is, if your solution, productivity, exercise routine, whatever routine you want to develop, if your solution relies on your weakness, it's much more likely to relies on your biggest strengths, because even on a crappy day, your weakness is going to be there. So a lot of my solutions key weaknesses, which is, for example, which is laziness. And I really encourage people to do that, because relying on your weakness doesn't take really any effort at all. And again, it is about making your solution as easy to implement as it can be.
Okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Like even with this podcast, when I started, I went with the easiest solution, and I found that I really like doing podcasts. So I just continued doing it, and will just improve on the way. So that's something I do myself, and it's something I talk in my webinar as well when I promote Find Focus, to do the things that are really easy for you and do not require any willpower. For example, a few years back, I tried to lose weight, and I just made the decision whenever I'm in the canteen or cafeteria, when I do not have any preference for the food, I will just choose the one that I know is healthier or vegetarian. And I lost like 10 pounds with that one simple framework that I came up with.
Well done. And it's exactly what I'm talking about. The simplest, and it's also what you've just discussed. As sort of you make your decision beforehand, so you've already decided, and you stick with it.
Yeah. You told me in advance that you're working on a new book. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
So my new book is, again, a result of my own struggles, but it is also, I'm aware of that this is not just me, and I've had a number of conversations and email conversations from a number of my readers who are facing similar difficulties. The book started off as a book about decision-making process, but actually is going to be not quite that. It is a book about refining your focus in life, your direction in life. It is a book about how to stop drifting in life, how to decide what you want to pursue. And it's for people who don't really have problems sort of setting goals and achieving them, but people who have found themselves at the point in life when they realize they're drifting, when they realize they are unable to choose what to pursue for whatever reason, and people who are stuck on a decision, unable to make a decision or unable to see options. And this is a book somewhere, I think of it as a book somewhere between motivation, because we are we motivated, okay? Motivated to do something constructive with our lives, to change our lives, to take in a new direction, and the goal setting. So it's that sort of gray, murky area where you know you want to do that, you know the moment you know what to do, you'll do it. But how do you figure out what to pursue, what direction to choose, how to make your mind up about it? So
Can
this is
you
really about
maybe
it.
share, like, to give a peek about the book, share one tactic or one trick or one hack or one solution from the book that really helps?
Um, well, I'm still at the stage of researching, but it is really again about understanding the nature of the problem, because you might sort of describe yourself as being stuck or drifting, but the reason for that might be different. And what I've discovered is this is also a book. I'm writing a book with a book for people who are analytically minded. Uh, People who generally have difficulties one way or another with sort of connecting with their emotions or reconnecting or understanding how it works, putting it to work. So a lot of those solutions that I'm going to talk about in the book will be around using emotions in a way that is constructive for you, not scary, not overwhelming, and acceptable, because we are told that being analytical is good and using emotions to make decisions is bad. Well, actually, what I found a lot of research into the importance of emotions in decision making, and how people who are totally analytical, how they struggle to make decisions. There's certain types of decisions in particular. So a lot of those solutions will be around using emotions in a constructive, non-threatening way.
Okay, yeah, it reminds me of the book Search Inside Yourself from Chan Meng Tam, where
Mm-hmm.
he was a engineer working at Google, and he developed some kind of mindfulness and explained it to his fellow people at Google, who are all developers and software developers, and he found a way to introduce these topics of mindfulness and getting in line with your emotions to these highly analytical people.
Yeah.
There anything I haven't asked you about focus or anything else that you want to talk about?
Not really. I really wanted to just to emphasize the importance of understanding your specific problem and applying a solution that will be specific to your situation, to your context, yourself, your personality. And from the years of experience with myself, but also working with other people in conversations with other people, if you have a problem with focus and you've tried multiple solutions, none of them have worked at all, or they just work for a while and they stop working, the problems can boil down to those two things. It's if you've tried multiple things, it's never motivation, because you've got motivation, you know you've got a problem, you're really motivated solving it, but really you either missed the point, you didn't quite get to the bottom of the problem, or the solution that you've tried, the solutions, because it's usually multiple, you've tried have not been adapted to your current context.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Thank you for the interview, Joanna. And how can people find out more about you and what you do?
So I have a website, www.theshapeshiftersclub.com, and you can find I've got some post articles there, that my books are there. And if you want to get in touch, there's also a contact form as well. So by all means, if you are interested in any of my previous books, any of my strategies, if you're interested in the new book, please let me know. I'm always happy to hear from my readers, and I do reply, and we get into a very interesting conversation. So please get in touch if you want to. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for the interview.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Martin, and all the best with your software and your podcast.
Okay, thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you.